11 years after her family destroyed her, Patricia Henderson walked toward courtroom 4B, file in hand. The name on the tab, United States v. Henderson.
Patricia allowed herself one thin smile. The little brother who framed her was about to learn what a scapegoat becomes when it grows teeth.
Your father and I have decided you will leave this house tonight.
Leave? For something I didn't do? You're not even listening.
Your brother says you stole his college fund, $18,000 gone. He saw you with the statements.
That's a lie. I never touched his money. Why would he say that?
Downstairs, Mark stood beside their father, arms crossed, with the calm of a man who had already won.
I saw her go through my account statements. She knew exactly how much was there.
Patricia, you've always resented your brother's success. This is the last straw.
She was outnumbered, outranked, and already convicted. The verdict came without evidence, without a hearing, without an ounce of belief.
But there's no proof. You can't just throw me out because Mark said so.
Mark is going to college. He's the family's investment. We won't have a thief jeopardize that.
You'll be fine. You're resourceful. Think of this as a lesson in independence.
A lesson. She had never been an investment, only an expense they could shed.
Carolyn gave her 1 hour. 1 hour to fit a lifetime into a duffel bag.
She packed in silence. They were erasing her, and they expected gratitude.
An hour later, the duffel sat in the back seat. The garage door opened into a rainy night.
This doesn't have to be forever. If you admit what you did, we might let you come back.
Patricia stared out the window. She had nothing to confess but a crime she didn't commit. The station was 20 miles away. For a girl with only $200 and nobody to call, it was exile. The car rolled to a stop under the flickering awning of the Greyhound station. The rain had thinned to a cold drizzle.
Here, $200. It's more than you deserve. Don't come back until you're ready to be honest.
$200, her entire future priced at the cost of a bus ticket and a cheap motel.
Patricia grabbed her duffel and stepped onto the wet pavement. She didn't look back at the car. Not yet. The station was nearly empty. Fluorescent lights hummed over a vending machine and rows of cracked plastic chairs.
You brought this on yourself. Remember that.
The sedan pulled away, its taillights bleeding into the rain. Patricia stood frozen, gripping the money so tight her knuckles whitened.
They actually did it. She was 17, alone, with $200 and a lie burning in her chest.
She sank into a plastic chair, the duffel at her feet. The next bus didn't matter. Nothing could go forward from here.
But somewhere inside the numbness, a small, furious voice whispered, "Survive. Just survive."
The first night, she curled on a shelter cot, the scratchy blanket reeking of bleach. No one there knew she'd once had a bedroom.
This was the price of being born into a family that valued reputation over truth.
Days blurred into weeks. She found work at a diner, scraping plates for tips that barely covered bus fare.
Every Saturday, she walked past the community college campus and promised herself, "This is not permanent."
She enrolled with the last of her savings. In class, she sat in the front row, notebook open, eyes fierce.
If they wanted a thief, she'd become something they could never discredit. A woman with the law on her side.
At night in the shelter dorm, she studied by the light of a cheap desk lamp, the law school brochure her bookmark.
Mark's lie had stolen her family, but it couldn't steal her mind. That was hers alone.
3 years later, she walked out of community college with a transcript full of A's and a duffel still packed for nowhere.
She was still invisible, still broke, but she was no longer the girl they threw away. She was becoming the woman who would one day bury them.
The shelter received a thick envelope. Full scholarship, full ride. Her hands shook.
She didn't cry. She didn't call anyone. She just stared at the name on the letter. Patricia Henderson, still standing.
She left the shelter for good, duffel in hand and a bus ticket to a new city.
The campus loomed beautiful and indifferent. Students walked like they owned the air. She would learn that walk.
Orientation. She wrote her name on a tag. Patricia Henderson. Not ashamed anymore. A declaration.
Every case study was a weapon. She imagined Mark on the stand, and she drilled the law into her bones.
Her focus narrowed to fraud, embezzlement, financial crime, the precise language of the man who had destroyed her.
He'd called her a thief. Now she was becoming the person who could prove who really stole what.
She led her class. A professor asked why she worked so hard. She said, "I'm not working. I'm preparing."
3 years of this, and every late night whispered the same promise. The girl thrown out would one day throw him into a cage.
11 years later, Patricia Henderson was an assistant U.S. attorney, known for icy precision and a win rate that shook defense teams. The case file landed on her desk without ceremony. USA v. Mark Henderson. 14 counts of embezzlement, $2.4 million.
Her body went cold. The name hadn't crossed her path in over a decade, but it never left her.
She opened the file and saw his booking photo. Older, harder, but the same smug tilt to his jaw.
She should recuse. The ethical rules were clear, but the girl who once begged for justice wasn't going to step aside.
She read the indictment. Vice president of a regional bank. Theft so systemic it mocked every lesson her parents ever gave about investment.
Mark Henderson had been living the life they said she didn't deserve. Now she would hold the pen that ended it.
Her supervisor asked if she had a conflict. She answered without hesitation.
No conflict. I'll co-file the motion.
That night, she stayed late, building the case. The file remained on her desk like a promise she had made to herself a decade ago. The day of arraignment, the courtroom was packed. Patricia sat at the prosecution table, her back straight, her face unreadable. A side door opened. Mark Henderson shuffled in, handcuffed, his eyes scanning the room with hollow arrogance.
He froze. The prosecutor was not some stranger. It was her, the sister he'd thrown away.
Patricia didn't flinch. She let the silence stretch, a decade of cold patience in her stare.
Carolyn in the gallery gripped her husband's arm and hissed, "That can't be her. Not after all this time."
George looked from Patricia to Mark as if the years had collapsed into this single, brutal tableau.
The United States calls this case United States versus Mark Henderson. Her voice was steady, official, laced with old ice.
Mark's lawyer guided him to the defense table. He sat down hard, the weight of 11 years of lies finally pressing on his chest.
She watched him crumble and felt nothing but the quiet satisfaction of a trap closing flawlessly.
The judge called for the charges to be read. The case was on, and the past was no longer buried. In the weeks after arraignment, Patricia's office became a war room of bank records and audit reports.
The embezzlement was clear, but it felt too contained. 2 years of fraud didn't match his appetite.
She told her investigators to go deeper, pull everything, back to when he was 19.
You're wondering why? Because a man who lies about $18,000 at 19 doesn't stop. Mark always had a reason. Gambling, probably. She could almost smell the desperation he'd hidden.
A formal request went to the bank, all internal audit reports, especially those prior to the indictment period.
Focus on patterns. If he stole from the bank before, I want the proof.
The room buzzed with the energy of a team that knew they were close to something much larger than the charges.
The answer is buried in those reports. Somewhere in the numbers, Mark's original sin is waiting.
The bank's compliance department promised documents within a week. Patricia set the file aside and waited. Before the audit arrived, Mark's defense moved to disqualify her. The motion cited irreconcilable conflict of interest and a decade-old family rupture.
She had expected this. It was the only card they had to play.
In court, the defense painted her as a sister hungry for revenge, not a prosecutor seeking justice.
Your Honor, my personal history does not alter the defendant's fingerprints on stolen funds. The facts speak for themselves.
He watched her, the same cold certainty he remembered from when they were kids. She wasn't going anywhere.
The judge asked if she could be impartial. Patricia turned to face him directly.
I've spent my career convicting people for what they did, not who they are. I intend to do the same here.
The judge denied the motion, his gavel echoing through the silent courtroom.
One obstacle cleared, but the real weapon was still in a file folder at the bank.
Trial was set for 6 weeks. Patricia gathered her files and walked past her family's row without a glance. The audit arrived in a banker's box, heavy with a decade of ledgers and hidden transactions. Patricia's team worked in shifts, tracing the money back years before the indictment period. Late one evening, an analyst froze at a figure buried in a 2014 entry. The amount, $18,000. The exact number Mark had accused Patricia of stealing.
The coincidence was impossible. Her fingers trembled as she pulled the report closer.
The withdrawal wasn't from any account linked to the indictment. It was older, smaller, and perfectly hidden. The analyst cross-referenced it with Mark's personnel file. The date matched his freshman year.
Print everything! I want the full context of this transaction.
The printer hummed, spitting out pages of damning detail. Patricia spread the pages on her desk. There, in black and white, was the shape of the lie that started it all. The audit trail was undeniable. The $18,000 came from Mark's own student account, not the bank's funds. He had embezzled from himself.
He stole from his own future, then blamed her. A cover for gambling losses he couldn't admit?
The pattern repeated. Small amounts in college, then larger sums at the bank. The 2014 theft was the seed of a decade-long fraud.
All the years she believed they thought she was guilty, when the real thief was their golden boy.
2 weeks before he accused her. An $18,000 bet gone wrong, and she was the price.
He didn't just frame her. He weaponized his own crime to get rid of her. She was the expendable one.
The prosecution's theory crystallized. Mark Henderson was a lifelong embezzler, and his first victim was his sister.
She would use this. Rule 404B allowed prior bad acts to show pattern. His original sin would bury him.
Patricia organized the documents, her hands steady now. The girl he threw away had the power to show the world who really stole what. The audit was more than evidence. It was vindication. 11 years of silence, and now the truth would speak in open court. Patricia assembled her team. The audit printouts, marked with highlights, covered the conference table.
This isn't just a record of theft. It's a roadmap of his life, from a desperate 19-year-old to a $2.4 million executive fraud.
She laid out the timeline. The $18,000 withdrawal in 2014, weeks before his accusation. Then silent years and the recent explosion.
If the court sees an unbroken chain of deceit, the jury will have no doubt. His first lie becomes the key to all the rest. We file under Rule 404B. It goes to intent, knowledge, absence of mistake. He didn't slip into fraud. He was born to it.
Her team understood. This wasn't just about the case. It was Patricia's name they were clearing. The motion was drafted with surgical precision, citing precedent and attaching the audit highlights.
This piece of paper she once feared would destroy her, now it would destroy him.
She signed the filing and sent it to the clerk. The die was cast. Now they waited for the judge's ruling. Patricia knew the hardest blow was about to land. The pretrial hearing convened in the courtroom. Patricia stood before the judge, the audit exhibits in her hand.
Your Honor, the people submit Exhibit 14A, Internal Bank Audit Records from 2014.
On the projection screen, the $18,000 withdrawal glowed. The gallery stirred with whispers.
Mark's throat tightened. That number, he'd buried it deep.
The defense attorney objected, waving his hands, calling it irrelevant and clearly prejudicial.
Your Honor, the defendant stole from himself to fund a gambling addiction, then accused his sister. It goes to motive.
She argued that the 2014 theft was the template for every crime that followed, a direct line to the $2.4 million. The judge studied the briefs, then nodded. Exhibit 14A is admitted under Rule 404B. The defendant's pattern is now evidence. Mark's face went ashen. Patricia had turned the family's oldest lie into the prosecution's sharpest weapon. After the hearing, Mark sat in a windowless conference room, his attorney's voice droning. The bank audit was now a permanent part of the record.
So this is it? I just take the deal and disappear for 7 years?
The prosecution's offer was clear. 7 years, plead guilty to all counts, and don't fight.
He thought about the alternative. 30 years if the jury saw his pattern.
His lawyer slid the plea agreement across the table, a pen lying diagonally.
7 years. He'd be 37 when he walked out, if he walked out.
Mark picked up the pen and signed. The scratch of his name felt final. At the plea hearing, the courtroom was nearly empty.
He admitted his crimes in a monotone, never meeting her eyes. The $18,000 lie wasn't mentioned.
The judge set sentencing for 6 weeks. Patricia rose, file in hand, and left without a backward glance. Patricia walked through the marble hallway, her heels echoing off the polished walls, the case file tucked under her arm like a shield against a past that refused to die.
Patricia, wait, please. I just need a minute.
She halted but didn't turn. The voice was older, thinner, but it still clawed at the base of her spine.
Honey, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about the audit. Mark lied to us from the beginning.
Patricia turned slowly, her blue-gray eyes behind her glasses as cold as the courtroom marble.
You also didn't ask. Not once. Not even when I stood in the living room begging you to believe me.
Carolyn's hand, reaching out, faltered. Tears carved tracks through her makeup.
11 years she had waited to say that, and it cost her nothing now.
She turned and walked past her mother, toward the exit. Her footsteps were steady, a quiet rhythm of finality. The glass doors swung open, and the harsh afternoon light swallowed her whole. She didn't look back. Sentencing day. The courtroom air was stale with anticipation. Patricia sat rigid, file closed. Mark stood, head bowed, in his now ill-fitting suit. The court sentences Mark Henderson to 7 years in federal prison, with supervised release thereafter. The gavel struck wood, a hollow punctuation. No more delays, no more lies to hide behind.
He finally met her eyes. No defiance left, just the hollow admission that she had won.
The boy who threw her out with a lie was now a convict number. She felt no pity, only a quiet surgical satisfaction.
A bailiff placed a hand on Mark's elbow. He rose like a man made of lead, his legs unsteady. In the gallery, Carolyn wept without sound. George stared ahead, his shoulders slumping under the weight of 11 years. Patricia had imagined this moment for a decade, the triumph. But what settled in her chest was colder, clean, uncomplicated peace. The bailiff led Mark through the side door. The lock clicked shut behind him, sealing away a lifetime of deceit. Patricia closed the case file, the first one she'd ever opened stained with personal history, and rose. Justice was no longer a fantasy. The courthouse emptied behind her. Patricia walked alone through the marble hall, each step a quiet echo of finality. She pushed through the exit doors and stepped into the golden amber light of late afternoon.
The last time she stood alone outside a building like this, she was 17 with a duffel bag and a lie burning in her chest.
She crossed the asphalt to her sedan, keys in hand, the click of her heels replaced by the hush of open air. Inside the car, the leather was warm, the silence absolute. She sat for a moment, hands on the wheel.
She'd spent 11 years climbing out of that bus station. Now it was just a memory, small enough to fold into a case file.
She started the engine. The radio murmured some classical piece. She turned it off, preferring the quiet. She pulled out of the lot, the courthouse shrinking in the side mirror.
She didn't look back. There was nothing left in that rearview mirror except a ghost that finally had no hold on her.
The city opened before her, a future without shadows. 3 months later, Patricia stood at the window of her corner office, 19 floors above the streets that had once rejected her. A brass nameplate was placed on her desk. Section Chief. The youngest in the office's history.
She traced the engraved letters with her finger. Her name, a title, a symbol of survival.
Behind the door, a small framed article about the Henderson case hung, where she would see it only when leaving.
It wasn't pride. It was proof that a courtroom, when it works, can etch the truth into history.
Through the window, The city spread beneath a late summer sky. The bus station was a ghost in another lifetime.
Every sleepless night in shelters, every case won, every cold refusal to be erased had built this view.
A young attorney knocked and handed her a new case file. She took it with the same steady hand that had signed Mark's plea. She glanced at the file, then back at the city. The work continued, but the wound had finally closed.
She was ready for whatever came next. The city, the cases, the future, all finally hers to claim.
In the quiet of her office, Patricia Henderson no longer heard the echo of that bus station. The hum of the city was enough. The girl thrown out at 2 a.m. with $200 now commanded a floor of federal prosecutors. Her brother's original sin was etched into a legal record that would outlive his prison term. The article on her wall wasn't about vanity. It was a receipt for a debt the truth had finally collected.
She had not forgiven her parents. She had simply moved beyond the need for their apology.
Justice had come cold and procedural, without tears or embraces. Yet it was more satisfying than any family reunion. The law was her language, the courtroom her home, and the verdict her proof.
She was not the hollow survivor of a childhood lie. She was the architect of its official refutation.
Beyond the window, the traffic moved, lives continued, and she oversaw it all from a height that had never been given. The truth had walked into court 11 years late, and when it left, it wore her name. She turned from the window and approached the desk, her reflection ghosting over the polished brass nameplate. Her fingers touched the engraved letters. Section Chief. The title was not a prize, but a receipt.
It had taken 11 years to walk from that bus station to this office. Every step had been hers alone.
She straightened the nameplate so it sat perfectly parallel to the edge of the desk. Outside, the city hummed indifferently, but inside, there was a quiet that felt like earned silence. She had no more looking back to do. The past was sealed in a case file on a shelf. Patricia Henderson sat down in her chair, the leather cool and familiar.
One day when Mark walked out, the world would still see her as the victor, and he would know it.
The afternoon light shifted on the nameplate, catching Patricia Henderson, Section Chief, in gold. She reached for the new case file. The work never ended, but the old story had finally found its final paragraph. The afternoon light deepened, casting long shadows across the office floor. The city sprawled beyond, indifferent to the woman who had conquered it. Patricia opened the new case file but didn't read. For a moment, she let the silence hold everything. A siren wailed in the distance, a reminder of the chaos she now shaped into order every day.
The girl with the duffel bag would have never believed this view was possible, but she had built it anyway.
She glanced at the framed article, USA v. Henderson. The photograph of her at the prosecution table, younger but already steely. It wasn't there for ego. It was there to remind her that even the most perfect lies eventually collapse under their own weight.
Somewhere in a federal cell, Mark was counting days. That was justice. Cold and exact.
She straightened the nameplate one last time, then leaned back, the leather sighing under her. The office was silent, save for the distant hum of the building. Outside, the city was alive, and for the first time, so was she. No more looking back. The next chapter was hers to write. The sun began its slow descent, painting the office in shades of amber and gold. The shadows lengthened, but they held no weight. Patricia closed the new case file and set it aside. The desk was clear now, except for the nameplate and a single pen.
She didn't need to prove anything anymore. The path from that bus station to this window was etched in stone.
She stood up, the chair rolling back quietly. The sound was barely a whisper in the vast, silent office. She walked to the window and pressed her palm gently against the cool glass. The city lay beneath her, a sprawling grid of light and shadow.
Once she was invisible. Now, from 19 floors up, she could see everything.
The nameplate caught the last of the sun, the letters blazing like a quiet victory. She turned back to her desk, but not to work, simply to stand in the space she had claimed, piece by piece. The story that began with a lie in a dark living room ended here, in gold and amber light, with her name etched into a door that would never close behind her. And as the day finally surrendered to night, Patricia Henderson, section chief, the girl who was never supposed to make it, simply remained.